All right. We're back in the studio and at Global Podcast Studios here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we've got the guest of the hour today. I believe this is his fourth visit to the studio. In addition to all of the recordings he's done here for his Cybersecurity Mindset podcast, none other than Mr. Dewayne Hart. Welcome back to the studio.
It is always a pleasure to be in Global Podcast Studio. Feels like home.
Yeah, nice. Your second home, yeah, at least, yeah.
Feels like a cybersecurity space.
Yeah, we are pretty secure here. And so speaking of that, obviously that is the subject matter at hand. And we've got a topic today that all parents, kids, grandparents are going to be very intrigued by. And it's something that's very, not just topical, because this is something that stays with you and can have repercussions. But we're going to talk about, the security tips involving keeping children safe online. And we're also going to give you some solutions as well. So Dewayne, right off the top here, what are some unique risks associated with children and their activities online? What are some problematic challenges there?
Rich, there's probably about 1 million of those.
Yeah.
But, I'm going to go off of 3.
Okay.
And these 3 are called my overall ones that I think that causes the most significant problem. I would like your parents to think about one concept. Your kid has a laptop or your kid has a smartphone. Think about privacy.
Right.
Think about the information sharing. Think about your kid probably having access to a website where they're sharing vital information.
Right.
Also, too, think about the safety of your kid.
Yep.
Predators.
Mm-hmm.
Think about criminals. Think about someone trying to extort your kid out of some money. Or just think about someone trying to force your kid to share private information about the family. Because information sharing has a life cycle, and it also has a line of information. And it's a continual process, because it starts from the kid,
right,
talking about just basic things about the family, but then it creates a chain reaction where someone wants to know where does daddy work, and then then it kind of goes on to discussion about where do y'all live, right?
When are you going on vacation? That kind of thing, right? When was your last trip? You kind of think about back in the day, you'd send your kid to the mall, but typically it was after school with a bunch of other kids. And it was a fairly self-contained environment, right? You had a lot of people there kind of, would keep an eye out on if there was anything went south. You had security patrol at least, right? But now we're in this kind of, I'd call it a worldwide mall, but there's no boundaries, right?
Well, there are no boundaries because we are in a digital age.
Yeah.
When information was shared about 50 years ago, and I've made the statement in previous podcast sessions that information was put in a shoebox and it was put in a closet.
Right.
But today we are in a digital age where smartphones, laptops, tablets, and even smart TVs are networked.
Right.
So criminals are pretty much behind the red curtain, and I call the red curtain their laptop. Right. They're not in a physical form.
Right.
So it makes it much more difficult now to find out who the criminals are.
Right.
But parents have to be smart and engage in the process and work ahead of criminals.
Yeah, because all parents at one point have that talk with their kid about stranger danger, right? And they know, like, stay away from vans or whatever, or people that are trying to give them candy or trying to talk them into something. But the kid can see that's an adult and it's inappropriate. And schools teach that, the parents teach that, the grandparents. There's children's programming on PBS and programs that talk about that. But how do you kind of describe to a kid that fun game, they've been playing since an infant? I mean, you see kids like in baby strollers on some type of device. Usually those are kind of offline, but eventually that moves online. And they're playing most of the time with, their friends that they know from school, right? But then all of a sudden this person slides in there with another handle for their game. You don't know who they are.
Well, it starts with cyber awareness.
Yeah.
Parents have to engage into cyber awareness because this topic, when it comes to children's online safety, it's not really presented as much as it should be.
Right.
Okay, so parents are not so much in the dark, but parents engage cybersecurity awareness from the perspective of their job and their own life. And in some fashion, I think that a lot of parents do practice cyber awareness because with smart TVs and laptops and phones, they limit their kids to using them for certain times of the day.
Right.
But I think that there's a more deeper type of discussion that should be occurring is that the technology aspect that goes along with these devices, because kids like to play video games.
Oh, yeah.
Video games are on a network.
Yeah.
All right.
A global network.
Right.
Where some of the laws don't apply, in overseas countries necessarily.
Right.
So you wouldn't send wouldn't put your kid on a plane and send them to a foreign country you've never been to on their own.
No.
That's what we're doing in some cases, right?
Well, see, now, this is where that cybersecurity mindset comes into play, because the cybersecurity mindset is about a common sense approach to utilizing cybersecurity. And when I speak of the cybersecurity mindset and some of those topics, such as having a proactive mindset, then it lights the light bulb.
Yeah.
And I think that parents understand it because they go, yes, this is exactly what he's talking about.
Right.
Oh, yes, I understand that now.
100%. I wonder, we didn't talk about this before the show, but I wonder if there's anything in the works in industry wide to create some type of trust, badge or certification that this site for kids, because a lot of obviously parents have to just trust that platform that they're doing the right thing. And, you've talked in previous episodes about when we think about corporate security and private use on your internet and your Wi-Fi, you do look for that HTTPS when you're doing e-commerce, right, to know that it's secure. Is there anything in the works that you're aware of that's on the horizon that would kind of certify that this site has been, verified and approved for kids under the 18, so to speak, or?
Yes, there are privacy laws in place.
Okay.
One of them is called COPA.
Okay.
COPA is out there with the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. Now, what COPA does is COPA states that sites must require verifiable parental consent for the collection or use of any personal information of young website users. Okay. So there are websites out there that are just made for young kids to use. Now, parents have to have that continuous engagement, is that situational awareness,
right? Yeah.
And
exactly,
and actually understanding the environment,
right?
Say that this is a website for my child,
right? Yeah.
And speaking of situational awareness, that's a second area of my book called the Cybersecurity Mindset.
Right.
So the cybersecurity mindset is a common sense approach, and it can be used anywhere.
Right. They're universal laws. Once it applies whether you're shopping online or your kids are playing games online. Right. There's some red flags and some things you should be aware of. Yes. So speaking about that, so that gives it another layer of security for the parents with kids that are online. And you really can't, a lot of people would argue the kids for their further education, all the technology, this is something that is going to be with them and they need to be cognizant of. And it's probably important in their career path to be savvy on, all the apps and widgets online, right?
Yes. I want to put a disclaimer down. We cannot excuse children away from technology.
Yeah.
We just have to be smart about teaching them to engage technology safely. Okay. And also to have that continuous monitoring mindset in place where you just don't say, okay, well, you can go use a computer,
right.
but do you know what they are browsing on the computer? Do you know who they call on their phones? And speaking of smartphones, that's probably one of the centralized risks out there. And there are some type of controls that can be put in place that can go help parents out. But I think a lot of that has to be learned through cyber awareness and to understand how this complete framework of children online safety operates.
Right. So if you're just tuning in, it's Rich Casanova here in our Atlanta Global Podcast Studios. We're having a great conversation with Dewayne Hart, the author of Cybersecurity Mindset, also the host of the Cybersecurity Mindset podcast. And we're having a conversation. Today's topic is on children's protecting kids online, basically. And so anything else you want to cover about COPA before we pivot to, parents interacting, with their kids online and some do's and don'ts, I guess? Or
yes, as an extension to COPA, probably about 2 months ago, the President of the United States signed a bill to actually increase protection for online safety for kids. And also, too, along with COPA, the Department of Homeland Security has a webpage stood up where parents can go and to learn more about children's online safety. And also, the children can actually take a course.
Oh, wow.
Where they can learn about some of the online safety features that actually needs to be in place, because we're in a digital age now.
Right.
Everyone, and I'll speak it again, everyone has to engage cybersecurity in some fashion and use technology, but our goal is to be safe.
Right. Yeah, speaking of the schools, is that something that's coming online, so to speak, in terms of being taught within the school, elementary schools about online and with kids, whatever? Do the teachers, is that a role that the teacher should have, or some curriculum? Because now in another episode, we're going to be talking about remote access to computers and remote working and so forth. A lot of these kids now are taking their devices like they used to take their textbooks, home and back and forth. Is that something the school systems are they behind the curve on that, or are they being proactive, or?
Rich, there is some proactive engagement into understanding children online safety, but I don't think it has reached the magnitude where it should be very protective. I think it's in the initial process, because as with technology, privacy laws, and other different factors in relationship to cybersecurity, there are some pain points, there are some growing pain.
Right.
It takes a while for organizations and people to come on board.
Yeah, big time. That's one of the purposes of your book and the podcast, educational and kind of, getting these subjects out in the ethosphere, so to speak. But the other thing about the schools is, like, I'm not typically an alarmist like we talked about beforehand, but this is some serious topic. And like, if the schools aren't ahead of the curve on this, they could, there's some litigation issues, right? Because, hey, you gave Timmy access to this, and you didn't do your due diligence to make sure that this site was secure.
Well,
right?
The first step in trying to curb issues is to have a conversation.
Right.
And what I would like for my listeners to gain after this interview is to start a conversation. Parents like to talk about their kids because their kids are their pride.
Right.
So
and the smartest, the best looking kid. Yeah.
Right. So if you're out with your friends, this could be a conversation to have.
Right.
All right. Now, one of the other features too is that parents can sit down with their kids and watch safety videos, or to have that conversation with them. All right. It's part of the digital age and digital parenting is what I call it.
Right. Yeah. Nice. The digital parent. That's your next book or whatever. That's a great, wow. That's very insightful. And that kind of, that's really, capsulizes what we're talking about, right? You talk about the hacker's hat. You got to be a digital parent.
You know what?
Because a lot of parents avoid that's they're old school and they're not involved in that. But for your own kids' safety, you need to be. And I love your idea you just said about having the parents go all in and not just being taking the course and going online, which is important, in learning and educating, but playing the video games with the kids.
Yes.
Right? They can be entertaining.
Right.
The kids will be excited that they can beat mom or dad at a certain game, but the kids may not know. But as the parent is playing, they're going to have their mind obviously is much more developed than that 10-year-old or even 17-year-old, and they're going to realize like this is kind of inappropriate.
That's right.
Right.
So it's great that it came up. Hopefully the cybersecurity mindset can actually build digital parents too.
Yeah.
And I think it will. And I always like to state that for every type of issue that we have in cybersecurity, it starts somewhere.
Yep.
And it can be resolved. But likewise, this is a very critical topic here because it's probably rarely discussed.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Because society spend a lot of times in high tempo environments trying to protect national
right.
security,
corporate,
critical infrastructure,
e-commerce,
right. Financial
institutions.
Right.
Yeah.
But that little president that sit in the chair over there,
right, yeah, little junior, yeah,
okay, he needs to have some cyber awareness training as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned parents. It'd be interesting to find out. I think an interesting dynamic would be parent groups getting together. Right. So it might organically come up in conversation. If couples go out to dinner, whatever, how's Timmy, you're doing or whatever. Right. But I think and there probably are parent groups that they can have these conversations. My kid experienced this, and so let me help you keep an eye out for that. I mean, there was a time, I guess it's still in place, where there's websites will teach parents what kind of short codes kids are using as text. So it looks innocent, but when they translate what that code that they're sending a text to a friend, it's inappropriate. But if you don't know it, it's like a foreign language.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It is part of learning. I think that part of the digital parenting, because I like that term.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Luckily, we're recording this, so we have time to trademark that and everything else before we release it on air. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Because anyway, go ahead. Yeah. You could do a whole seminar on that. Yeah.
I got some thoughts that are like going through my head about digital parenting. And, I hate to spill any beans.
Right.
But I'm going to come back to digital parenting.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't already labeled this podcast title, that could be the title right there. But so another thing we talked about before we went on the air was this issue of cyberbullying. Talk to us about that and obviously the problem. How much does it permeate, on the internet, and then what are some solutions?
Well, when we think of cyberbullying, it is different from physical bullying.
Yeah.
Because everyone has a child and probably went to school and and their kid were pushed around and bullied by some other child.
Right.
Now, take that and transition that over into the technology arena and understand how online social media accounts, text messages, email website, chat rooms are used to inject bullying. Okay. Now what happens is that threats are coming through an electronic form.
Yeah.
All right. And it could be in a chat room, where they have a virtual meeting.
Right.
Now that's cyberbullying. There have been cases over the past years where, little kids have been affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
And, through cyberbullying.
Right.
So the idea is to be engaged.
Right.
And to learn as much as you possibly can, because we are in this digital age, and as a digital parent,
right. Yeah.
It is most important that you have that continuous engagement into cybersecurity. I just want to make one tip here. The last section of the cybersecurity mindset talks about being adaptive and, the cybersecurity mode of thinking. Mm-hmm. And that cybersecurity mode of thinking is to have a continuous engagement into cybersecurity.
Right.
So when we transition that over to digital parenting, we are saying that parents have a continuous engagement into technology that their youth and kids would be using at their house.
Right.
Smartphones, okay, tablets, laptops,
right,
and smart TVs as well too now.
Yeah, because the TV seems like an innocent device in our home, right? It's just broadcast stuff. But now, like you said, connected not just the internet for Netflix and other HBO and programs, the traditional media, but it's interactive.
But
it's a two-way.
Yes, because there are controls that you have on these smart TVs where you can set up an account where it states that this account is for kids and this account is for adults.
Yeah.
Because you have that feature that you can set up as well.
Yeah, which kind of piggybacks to what you're talking earlier about our mobile devices, specifically, the smartphone. So talk to us about, there's devices or apps, right, that can monitor that and prevent certain sites, right?
Yes. Now, from a high level, Google has a free app that you can download as well.
Okay.
And there's a lot of apps for Android and also for iPhones.
Right.
Now, these apps can be downloaded to your kid's phone so that parents can monitor their activity. And I believe there are also apps where you can check location.
Right.
And I believe the information is shared, from a child's phone over to the parent's phone.
Sure.
Okay. So that's very important. Some of the other features of these apps too is that you can limit the screen time. Let's say for instance, if you only want to restrict your child from using the phone from 10 at night up until 6 in the morning, well, you can set those parental controls on there. But it can't use the phone.
That's awesome on so many different levels, right? Because it's that late night hours. What was it? Mom would say nothing happens good after midnight or whatever, right?
Yes.
Or 2 o'clock in the morning. We've all been caught in situations we kind of regret being out too late, right? But in this case, they're online too late, and not only from the cybersecurity standpoint, but from their rest, and less screen time is healthy. That's a pretty common consensus. So we got a few minutes here remaining in this episode. So I know there are a couple of things we talked about before the show, as well as you want to hit some other points as well. But talk to us about. I like this idea that we talked about. It sounds kind of simple, but two things is keep that computer, because a lot of people have family computers or their laptops for the kids, but make sure it's in a high traffic area that you can easily monitor. You shouldn't be ashamed or concerned about looking over your child's shoulder. That's your responsibility as the adult in the home place, right?
Yes. You are only as safe as your mindset.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as a digital parent,
right?
if you're not continuous engagement and watching, then you're not being safe. Some of the other things that cure is that as you have that continuous engagement, you're going to be able to sit and to see dangers.
Right. Yeah.
Some of the other factors too is that you can set rules. Now, some of these rules can be electronically done.
Yeah.
And others can be verbally done.
Exactly.
Okay. Because if you have a child and you say, hey, after 10 o'clock at night, no phone. Right. No computer.
Right.
Okay. So that's a verbal type of control that you put in place. All right. Now the electronic method is to just cut off the computer and lock it in the closet after 10 at night, or to go take that smartphone
or turn off your Wi-Fi.
Yes, one of those. Some of the other things that could occur is that you want to keep the lines of communication open. Like you always want to have that continuous engagement. And I use the term continuous engagement because you always have to be at the front line of actually being a digital parent.
And I like this, the premise of like keeping those lines open. Really, just every so often have a conversation with your child, right? And asking, is there anything online that's concerning to you, that's been awkward or uncomfortable, right? Much like you would say the cyberbullying at school, whatever, in the traditional days. Is there anything happening at school that's upsetting you, right? And a lot of times kids are just looking for that opportunity. They may not bring it up, but if you're handling, if you have a good rapport and relationship, that's a conversation you can have. So we are just about out of time, Dewayne. So any closing thoughts or points you wanted to leave your listeners with?
Oh, yes. Take the information from this interview section, share it with your communities. If you're on my LinkedIn webpage, or if you're on Facebook, and if you're listening to this interview session, I want you to take it and to share it with 10 parents.
Okay. That's a good goal, yeah.
I challenge you to share it with 10 parents and tell 10 parents to share that with
Right.
10 other parents.
Nice.
Okay? Because as a parent, we are in a digital age.
Yep.
And you all have earned that trophy of being a digital parent.
Right.
Okay. Now I am giving you that trophy.
Right.
As the digital parent, because there's no way out of this
Right, yeah.
cybersecurity space.
Exactly, yeah.
You are the digital parent.
Right. All right. So, Dewayne, enjoyed the conversation. I feel much more enlightened. I hope our audience does as well. And we'll look forward to our next conversation in the studio for the next episode.